Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Daniel Hodgson. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial and representatives of the Royal Australian Air Force Association. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Pilot Officer Robert Henry Beddoe. Robert Beddoe was born on the 4th of February 1923 in Elsternwick, Victoria, to Francis and Lily Beddoe. Beddoe attended Ripponlea State School and won a scholarship to the Melbourne Technical College, where he studied bookkeeping. In 1940, his brother Lloyd died suddenly, aged 24. Beddoe was still a student when he enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force on the 17th of June 1942, aged 19. He trained as a pilot and in April 1943 received his wings. The next month he was made sergeant. Beddoe embarked for overseas service from Sydney on the 25th of May 1943, arriving in the United Kingdom in July. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27,000 RAAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, gunners and engineers who joined Australian and British squadrons in Britain throughout the course of the war. Further specialist training followed in England, and in November he was promoted to flight sergeant. In May 1944, he was commissioned as a pilot officer, and that August he joined No. 83 Squadron, RAAF. As part of Bomber Command, the squadron flew the 4-engine Avro Lancaster heavy bomber. On the 31st of August, Beddoe and his crewmates were attached to No. 463 Squadron, RAAF, undertaking a cross-country navigation exercise over central Scotland. Also aboard were Australian Flight Sergeants Stanley Abbott, Terence Dent, Bevel Glover, David Ryan and Frederick Walker, and British Warrant Officer George Middleton. The Australians had been together since February. While flying south of Inverness, the aircraft entered a steep, high-speed dive. As Beddoe tried to pull up, the pressure on the aircraft caused it to break apart mid-air. It crashed in the middle of the Mona Loi Mountains. Every man aboard was killed in the crash. The bodies of the crew were recovered, and the Australians were buried with full service honours in Cambridge Regional Cemetery. Warrant Officer Middleton's remains were returned to his hometown of Glasgow. Today, Pilot Officer Robert Beddoe rests under the inscription, "Our darling boy, ever remembered." He was 21 years old. The squadron's wing commander wrote to Beddoe's grieving parents, praising their son and adding these words of comfort. "It is so difficult to find the words to express one's feelings at a time like this. Mere words seem so completely inadequate, but I would say that the true measure of life is not in length of years, but rather in the quality of its living. And by this token, your son, in his devotion to duty, courage and sacrifice, attained the fullness of life." Robert Beddoe was dearly missed by his family and friends, who placed in memoriam notices in the newspaper after his death. One, inserted by his cousin Norma, with whom he had stayed in Wales, read, "Time heals, they say. Maybe it does, but memories last. And so does love." Pilot Officer Robert Beddoe's name is listed on the roll of honour on my left, along with some 40,000 others from the Second World War. A flying boot recovered in early 2000s from the crash site on the night of the 31st of August 1944 has recently come into the memorials collection and is displayed tonight beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Pilot Officer Robert Henry Beddoe and all those Australians who have given their lives in service of our nation.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemned. at the going down of the sun and in the morning. We will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the Last Post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, we thank you for visiting the War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.